There's a lot of work around process and policy and strategy, and all of that stuff is really important. And we need to make sure that our policies and processes are, free from bias. And inclusion is injected into the system. But I think broadly we need to think about organizational cultures. So, what does an inclusive culture look like? What are the ingredients of that? And I think there's a number actually. I think, obviously having one which is, based on the principle of respect, which is key. But I guess then we need to think about, well, what does respect look like? What does respect feel like? How do we measure respect? And, respect is about really appreciation of difference, which is one core element of it. But I think we need to move beyond just measuring appreciation. We need to measure how do we value people, actively value people who are different from us, different thinking styles, different work styles, and the rest of it. And the other thing we need to start measuring is interaction, so behaviors. So I might value an individual, but my behavior might play out in a different way. So I think behavioral indicators really help us to think about what an inclusive culture looks like and feels like. And I think there are some other ingredients around that. So one is the idea of kind of, being authentic. Can you come into work and, some cultures that we work with, we have colleagues that can come in and, just be themselves and they're not fearful of discrimination, bias, and the rest of it. Where other people might come in and they might feel vulnerable to reveal who they are. So that's clearly an example of, inequity or, not being able to be yourself. So I think we're thinking about things like respect, authenticity, I think high levels of emotional intelligence. So, the free flow of conversation and just being interested in other colleagues and the rest of it. So there's some of the things that we need to start thinking about in terms of that cultural side. There's many things that we can all do to promote a culture of respect, but leaders have a particular role. And I guess leaders need to start thinking about three basic things. The first thing that I think leaders should think about is their own behavior. How do they role model inclusive leadership? What is that shadow that they cast? And so I think thinking about how you think and how you act as a leader is the first critical thing. I think the second thing that leaders really need to do is to step out of their own comfort zone and just really start connecting with people that are different from them. Going to, various events, various networking events, all of that kind of stuff, because that really helps to raise their awareness. It builds curiosity, which builds insight and all of that stuff. So I think that's critical. But I think leaders also need to play some other roles as well. And I think one of the big roles that leaders need to play is a role of questioning, like asking for information, asking for the data, asking their HR teams or their D&I teams, where do we see bias still creeping in? Where are we doing well, but what are the challenges that we're still facing and all of that? So that kind of questioning, that kind of devil's advocate role and the rest of it. And then I think the final thing that leaders need to do is play a role of sponsorship. It's not good enough for leaders to say, hey, listen, I get this stuff. I'm committed to it. I'm aware of my own behaviors. I'm aware of my own shadow and how that plays out. I'm looking at the data and the rest of it. What you need to do as a leader is you need to step out and step into diversity and make sure that you are using your voice and using your privilege to advocate on behalf of others in order that you can actively progress their careers. We often talk about how leaders can help to, create a culture which is truly inclusive. But I think also, we need to expand the conversation out and think about, well, what is it that we can all do as employees? And I think the first thing to think about is, well, our own behaviors as employees. Yes, we talk about inclusive leadership and we talk about leaders, their need to role model and the rest of it. And that is, critical. But actually, I would also say to employees, well, how are you role modeling? How are you calling out bad behavior? Are you, calling out bad behavior? Or are you being that bystander? Are you aware of your own language? Are you clued up in terms of how your own communication styles might promote, in groups for some people, but out groups for others? So I think a big element of self-reflection actually on all colleagues and awareness that we all view others from our own perspective, our own world view. And that world view will determine who we like to have lunch with, who we like to have coffee with, and the rest of it. So I think awareness for all of us as individuals and as colleagues, but also I think colleagues have a responsibility to advocate on behalf of others. And so just being proactive and kind of, leaning into different communities and the rest of it, and supporting different communities, whether it's Pride Month or Black History Month or International Women's Day, and championing those causes. I think we can all do that, as well as expecting our leaders to do that at the same time.